know your predictions for Spence Crawford. Give us any analysis you want to. I know I'm in the minority here and I can see a number of different outcomes, to be honest. Maybe not Crawford on points due to the PBC as much, but we'll get to that later. Anyway, let me know how you see it playing out in the chat box there, in the comments below. Let's see who you've got. Or if you want to come on like the boys, like Danny, like Michael, like Ames, like Joe, then the link to StreamYard is floating about. Feel free to jump on. Des, who's been on calls in the past, Nutter's calls, says 2 brilliant fighters, nothing in them. Bud wins, in my opinion. He's lived better these past 3 years. Good point. Stronger, better activity, and most importantly, no impacting injuries. Bud points, which is an interesting one, Andy. Leads me on to my first point, which I'll bring up to you. What is Spence's physical shape like right now? Is the car accident still a factor? Should we be worried by these persistent eye injuries? Is there a chance Crawford, with all of his power, his strength, his desire, his dog, finally puts a dent in that creaking frame?
I'm not too sure, to be fair, mate. I mean, obviously, you could say maybe Spence has looked really good since he come back from the injury. It was Danny Garcia and the Ugas fight. I mean, at least against Garcia, he looked as good as he's ever been, really, to be fair. So, I think
he had another car accident in the middle.
Yeah, he seems to be in great shape enough in that as well. He's had the eye operation and that. Don't know if that'll be a factor. My main question going into this fight is as to how both start it. I think we'll get a bit of a chess match for about 2 or 3 rounds, and then I think because the guys are too good, they're too skilled, it's got to break into a fight at some point. I think we're about maybe the middle half of the fight, and down the back half, it's going to have to start kicking off. I think we know how good a finisher Crawford is. It's the other question mark for me is how Spence holding up some of these shots. I mean, look at how Crawford sometimes throws those winging hooks in there. Is Spence holding up to those shots? I mean, remember that punch he took off Ugas? He's stamping all over the ring. He's got the mouthpiece falling out. It does bring question marks at the end of the day. Can he take the shot? As he got a bit of crack in him there? We don't know. I mean, obviously his technical ability kind of covers up any other flaws that he might have at this point. He's gave Floyd Mayweather the business when in sparring at one point. It was so good that even Floyd at the time was saying that Spence was going to be there at the throne.
Give him a black eye, didn't he?
He gave him the really, really hard business. Floyd said he needed it because he was just.
Floyd had been in prison, hadn't he? And he was preparing for the Guerrero fight. This was 2013. Yep. Spence was a 4-0 pro at that point, and he came in and gave Floyd the work that he needed to get himself in shape.
Yep, definitely.
He was almost as old as Floyd was when he sparred him now. Like Errol Spence is no longer a young fighter.
No longer a young fighter, you're right, and obviously he spent that entire career at 147, just before I don't know if anybody remembers, just before the car accident, actually. Who was the fight before the car accident? Just
Porter, a month before.
Right, so I think he dumped like some 25, 30 pounds before that fight, and he actually came on Twitter and he said, I got to stop doing this shit. I've got to get my diet in order. And I think he's brought in some conditioner in as well and do his food and that type of thing as a direct result of it. So that might be adding a wee bit of benefit to it as well. But obviously you'll have the size, I would imagine, on fight night. I don't know how much, obviously, but Crawford with his background with wrestling and that, I think he'll be a menace for Spence on the inside. I don't think the size will be that much of a factor as well. I think if you look at the Porter fights as some sort of kind of like say measuring stick, obviously you can say that Crawford dealt with it far better. The Spence fight as such was kind of like more kind of in battle. The thing with Crawford was he nullified Spence trying to get on the inside. He was happy to hold him, was happy to wrestle him, and he was happy to reset and then get back onto his boxing. The other question as well kind of brings up to me is does Crawford spend the entire fight fighting as a southpaw, or does he start orthodox? Does he go to southpaw? I think he'll probably stick to his southpaw for the best part of the fight. Don't change what works for you. And I think everybody agrees that Crawford's a far better southpaw. Then you got to wonder as well, is Spence preparing for those southpaws and that as well? He's had the proper and the adequate sparring, because I think at this point as well, you can say that Spence is without doubt top 5 fighter in the world at this point, pound for pound. So the argument is the winner of this fight becomes pound for pound number 1. Who knows? But What was the question again? I'm kind of like rambling on here.
No, it doesn't matter. Just keep
What's your take on the
spewing your
fight?
thought.
You're
Yeah,
right in
exactly.
there.
Spence's deficiencies really, again, you just wonder. Obviously, he's had. I mentioned the injuries and the surgeries. That the body doesn't forget about that type of stuff. Is this the moment? Because obviously Crawford is known to be a very good finisher. I forget how many fights he's on a kind of knockout streak at the minute, and that, but it's quite a few, possible double figures actually at this point. I'm siding with Crawford. I'm going down the stretch, and I think Crawford could do a decision, but I don't know. He's had to take the B side of this, shall we say? He's had to kind of make concessions for the fight. I don't know if he'll get a fair shake on the cards at the end of the day. It is Vegas. Spence has got all the drawing power. He's got all the pay-per-view buys behind him. He is the star, or the attraction, so to speak. So if Crawford's going to do this, he's prone to slow starts. I think he's got to start quicker, keep on the gas. Can he be having doubts going into that fight actually? Because you remember the Sean Porter situation when he's like mouthing off the corner, thinking the judges had Porter up on the cards, and he's like, really, him up in the card, and they came out and they stopped the fight actually in the next round. Doesn't need any of that shit. Just get in, do the business straight away, get right off on the front foot immediately, because I think if he starts too slow, before he knows where he's 3 or 4 rounds down, then he's having to chase it. And then it just takes Spence to win 3 rounds over the course of the next 6, and he's a winner. So fast start, and I think Crawford could probably do it, but it's got all the hallmarks of a classic. This, I really think it has got a possibility at some point to kick off properly and have
It's
a right
got to.
good
They're too
fucking fight.
proud and stubborn, the two of
Yeah.
them, for it not to.
They've got to be good. And I think both are decent hitters. People are saying that Spence's power is more thudding, it wears you down, whereas Crawford is quite deceptive with his power because of the speed of some of his shots and with angles they can come up with them. They can, they're quite frightening. They're quite powerful in the kind of way he knocks them out as well. I've never seen Spence knock out someone properly clean since Bundu, I don't think. And you know how far back that goes back in his career, just on the offhand.
No, he breaks you down, doesn't he, from angles?
He does. And
Yeah.
obviously we did the Brook in that as well, obviously as well. So,
Mhm.
but again, they're no peak anymore. Or Spence, I don't think is at his peak anymore. But we'll soon find out. Again, we don't need the judges. We don't need a shit referee or shit judges. Let the guys bang it out, and I think we'll get it. But I'm going to be flim-flamming on my pick, because I could easily see Spence get the nod here. If he's on his feet and if it's close, he probably gets the nod. But I'm going to side with Crawford on points. Close, but probably controversial as well.
Crawford on points for Andy. Chris Butler says definitely going the distance, I think. MB says Bud all day long. Chris Butler, Crawford split. Yeah, most people are going for Crawford. Crawford late stoppage. If Crawford stops him, it's going to be through a hell of a battle, in my opinion. The amount of people who are saying as if he's going to go through Spence like a knife through butter, I just do not see that at all.
Well,
Spence is a
Steve,
hard bastard, like.
Well, Steve, you do have to consider. I think it's Spence, durable fighter, top level fighter, and when you get into the top levels of boxing, the stoppages, obviously the number of them just falls off a cliff. Skill versus skill gets much more difficult at that point in time. But since picking off his first title against Ricky Burns, only 2 fighters have gone the distance with Terence Crawford. Can you name them?
Jerry John was one of them, or
Nope.
Hank Lundy.
Benavidez, no, he got into the 12th, but he didn't get stopped. Postol.
Yep.
Let me think.
He was fighting to keep his immigration status. So.
Beltran.
Yeah, that carried him through. That carried him through.
I forgot he even fought him.
All right, so that's something to consider. Okay, that's a very, very big deal. That only 2 guys in his title reign have lasted the distance, and he was even though he was able to ultimately take out Ugas, I think Ugas had some recency bias, Steve. You got to kind of look at that win over Pacquiao, where his legs were just dead, really made Ugas look like a better fighter than he actually was.
Well, Michael Thompson says Crawford is a boxer tricks way too good. Why is he way too good, man? I think that's too much for me, to be honest with you. I don't see much between them at all.
Name a punch that Terence Crawford hasn't stopped
Yeah, but
somebody
way
with.
too good. Like for Spence, effectively, way too good.
Name a punch that Terence Crawford hasn't stopped somebody with. I mean, other than a jab, obviously.
The dodgy gloves.
That was well. You are you
Look,
going to credit?
Crawford's
Sorry,
an
are you going
amazing
to credit
fighter.
Are you going to credit the uppercut or the hook for that
Crawford's an
knockout?
amazing
Steve?
fighter. I don't debate it. I just don't see that much between the two of them, to be honest with you. Like, I don't see it being a one-sided fight. Myself, like others might disagree.
I don't know. What does the other Matt say? The superior Matt think of this fight?
Well,
Butters.
Matt Slippery Butters is on the call here. Go on then. Jump on in there.
You're right, guys. Can you hear me all right?
Oh, we can hear you all right. Go ahead.
Perfect. I don't think I'm going to add anything more than what's already been said, but I'll give it a go with my usual casual opinions. To be honest, I have to agree with the rest of the lads. I just think I don't think it will be a wide fight either way. I think it will be distance, but I just think Crawford will just have that little bit more to take it, in my opinion. A lot of what swerved that for me is really what is kind of lacking in Spence. I take a lot from the fact that, he hasn't fought since Ugas back in April last year. There's still question marks around the car accident. There's still question marks about, where he's really at, his activity. I think he's taken a lot of time out of the ring, too much time for me. Whereas, Crawford, there might be questions about the sort of people he's fighting, Avanesian, etc. But like, at the very least, he's staying active, relatively active at least, and putting on demolition jobs against these guys. And I just think, I just think Crawford has that extra gear that he can go through. The Porter fight was mentioned earlier with Crawford when he was told in his corner, you're down on points. Now, we can argue whether or not he actually was or what the judges' scorecards were at the time, but the point is he was told that he was down on points. He went out there, got into another gear, and finished the job. That is, that is a true great mentality that you can just switch on and just get the job done. And I just think that something similar is going to happen here. Spence is probably going to not necessarily sweep the first half of the fight, but I think he's going to start faster because I don't think Crawford is kind of known for being a bit of a slow starter. I think Errol will probably take some of the earlier rounds, and I just think after a certain point, Crawford will just be told, you're going to have to start throwing, you're going to have to start getting some more activity, and that switch is going to go off in his head, and he's just going to dominate. Like I say, I think this is going to be a distance fight, a very close fight, but one that, is quite close but clear for Crawford. One of those sorts of decisions, and it's just, oh God, it's going to be a really good fight. This is one of those few times that I'm actually considering buying the pay-per-view. I'm pulling a Matty here, going to buy the pay-per-view potentially. And it's actually good. It's actually good to see this being advertised properly. I was watching the UFC last night. Sorry for mentioning the UFC, by the way, the boxing pod.
But, bleep that out on the rerun.
Yeah. I was watching it, and in between all the fights on TNT, they were advertising the Spence, pay-per-view. And I was chatting with some of my casual mates about it, and trying to like really sell them on the fact that this is a really good fight. And it's just good to see that this is actually getting some push by TNT, or BT, whatever you want to call them now, and in the name of TNT, I do think this will be quite explosive. So yeah, one to stay up for certain. If not wake up at whatever time it's going to be, 4 a.m. But yeah, absolutely, it's going to be a fantastic fight, lads.
Matt, you weren't here for the Inoue Fulton fight, so I am keen on your opinion on that, but also the wider picture. I think it was either Matty or Andy mentioned pound for pound earlier. Where does that fit in during the week? Like, is it what have you done for me lately? Is it the winner of which respective fight? Maybe the weight is against Fulton out of the 4 of them. If he were to win, maybe wouldn't go top, but where do you see the pound for pound ending up between the quartet of fighters?
Yeah, it's a good question, actually. And I said it earlier in the chat. if Inoue does a job against Fulton, I'll go a step backwards. I actually think that Inoue Fulton is a bit of a sleeper fight, and I actually think it has the potential to be the better fight if Inoue comes out and if he ends up stopping Fulton, then I think that has the potential to be the fight of the week, actually. And you know, obviously it's going to be small margins picking out the better fight between, you know, this fantastic quartet, as you're saying. But yeah, I actually do think that it has the potential to be the better fight. Anyway, going back to the question about the pound for pound, if Inoue stops Fulton, then he's number one pound for pound for certain. No question. For me, at least. If Crawford stops Spence, then he'd probably still be number two if Inoue does the same to Fulton. That's my honest opinion. And the reason why I say that is just because of what I mentioned earlier, the fact that Spence has been inactive. There have been these question marks about him in the past. Whereas with Fulton, you know, Inoue's coming up in weight, 122 pounds, cleared out the other weight division, is coming up against an elite fighter in Fulton, by the way. This isn't some random guy. This is an elite fighter. It's just a shame that it's an elite fighter against, you know, what I think is a pound for pound great, you know, an all-time great of the lower weight divisions in Inoue. So I do think if Inoue puts on a show against Fulton and stops him, he'll be the one at the top of the pound for pound list. So whereas if Crawford stops Spence, I'd still probably put him at number two, to be honest.
Yep. Fair assessment from Matt Butters there.
Although,
when you go, Matty?
No, never mind.
No, I was just going to mention the you guys fight. I've seen some of the highlights and that on YouTube. I was just kind of going through some of the build-up stuff and that as well. Forget that you guys actually even touched this guy up to the body, Spence. So another thing to watch out for as well. Obviously on the inside, if Crawford does manage to get some of those body punches home and that, so just want to keep an eye out for. I just think he looked a bit kind of uncomfortable, and he wouldn't fire back. He would be happy to kind of sit behind the high guard and kind of flinch the body back when the kind of body shots came in. So want to keep an eye out for.
Absolutely. Mark Wharton says, got to go for Crawford. Spencer's had to listen to Joshua speaking nonsense every day in this camp, which is actually a fair assessment, an intangible that we maybe haven't taken into consideration. MB.
Just standing at the fucking side of the ring during sparring. Champ!
Yeah. Errol, I'm heavy.
Throw him like Rocky. You're 10.5 stone.
I don't know if anybody caught up with the build-up show, episode 2. Actually, Joshua actually makes an appearance in it, and obviously I think Errol trains in Texas. It must be roasting there because Derek James is actually complaining that it's too hot. He wants to go outside in the shade and train rather than sit in the gym, eh? So I wonder how Joshua's freaking finding the heat out there, man.
He's going to come in about flipping 11 stone.
Exactly, man. I'm not heavy anymore.
Thin. It's like fucking 110 degrees in Texas.
That's the temperature down there, Matty.
It's so he's probably spending time in Dallas at Spence's training camp, and then they probably also are doing some work in Vegas. And both of them have been like between 100 to 110 degrees Fahrenheit. I don't know what the exact Celsius is, like probably somewhere around like 50.
What? Give me a second here. It's 43 degrees. Holy
Well, there you go.
The heat is on, boys. Anyway, MB says we have seen
Crawford. Dry heat as well, too.
Oh, it would be.
It's a fucking oven down there. It's like being in a fucking oven.
Mm-hmm. We've seen Crawford hurt on more occasions, to be fair. Also, Sean Porter was talking about something on one of the YouTube channels saying that Spence fights hurt quite well. You know, whenever you hurt him, he does seem to get through it quite well. So, I don't know. They've both been hurt in the past to the head and especially to the body in Spence's case, as Andy mentioned. So, you know, it's hard to take until we see them in against each other. Team Spence on points, says Jason Cheel. Chase Athletics says Crawford by KO based on recent mathematics. Spence went the distance with Mikey. Ames, tell me about their respective trainers and where they fit in. Derek James, he's the flavour of the month. against Bomac, who's been sampling every flavour of the month by the looks of him. I think that the two fighters at this stage is their respective.
That was good.
Just thought of that one. Their respective careers. Trainer input maybe isn't going to change the outcome too much, Ames. I wouldn't have thought with this level of experience on display. Maybe I'm wrong. What do you think?
Yeah, in the case of Crawford, look, Bomac, outside of, from what I remember of the fighters he's worked with outside of Crawford, he hasn't really found that same magic that he has with Crawford. Now, whether that's to say, look, he might just be a fighter who works with one fighter and he's guided Crawford to where he is, and he should get the credit for that regardless. And, you know, if it doesn't work with another fighter, then fair enough. It doesn't work with another fight. We're talking about a very high IQ level fighter. Not many fighters can replicate it on that level. But like other fighters I used to work with, Amir Khan, look, he got Khan toward, you know, at the end of his career when Khan was like a shell of whatever Khan was. So can he really be judged on those type of fights? But really, he should kind of be judged on his work with Crawford, and he's brought Crawford into a position where, you know, he's up there with and potentially will be up there with the greats when all is said and done. Derek James's career so far as a trainer speaks for itself with the amount of fighters he's worked with and is currently worked with. Don't really need to go through all of them, but Derek's a lot more accomplished in what he's brought to bring into his fighters, where he's got to them to, and also improving his fighters as well.
Trainer
we'll
of
see
the year as well, isn't it?
Yeah. But we'll see what happens with Ryan Garcia. That'll be an interesting one to another string to maybe Derek James's bow. When, you know, of the little clips that we see online, we see Ryan Garcia's finally got his hands up to protect his chin, working with Derek James in the last few weeks that he's been working with. But look, of the two fighters, if you were to ask me who I'd want in my corner, I'd probably want Derek James, just the more accomplished fighter of the two. But it's a difficult one. They're going to earn their stripes, even more so in this fight. One of the most interesting points and factors in the fight is that the minute in between rounds and the advice that they're given, because these two can equally affect the fight from the outside as much as they can from inside too. But yeah, just throwing in my points on the fight, as previously mentioned, I don't really buy into the effects of the car crash stuff. Obviously, I buy into the fact that the car crash definitely happened.
Oh, do you think it didn't happen, Ames? This is interesting. Go on.
Conspiracy theory.
Oh, Rob's got to hear this one. He'll love it.
But look, at least, you know, there's no lasting damage that's really been evident. It's not really quantifiable, and it may be even unfair unless some total capitulation happens on Spence's part in the fight against Crawford. But how much of that would you be taking away from what Crawford or whatever Crawford does in the fight on the night? You feel like, or at least I feel like, any lasting damage would have been evident by now. Danny Garcia is an elite level fighter, but he's a world class fighter, world class one for sure, and he might be his one dimensional fighter, but I think he'd find that lasting damage
he'd find
at
out
that level. He would have found that out, as would the UGAS. So it's hard for me to really kind of buy into this car crash kind of thing. For me, if anything's kind of changed post car crash, his form is just that little bit blotchy, just that little bit fluid. It's kind of hard to kind of put into words, but I think maybe I might be making this up. I might remember this wrongly or whatever. My wires might be crossed, but maybe he was saying in the aftermath he couldn't close his hand properly, or his hand kind of closed a little bit differently. Maybe that's been remedied or whatever. Something in my head kind of
had to get his teeth all kind of reimplanted.
And then UGAS knocked them all out again.
That's right. But yeah,
you guys had him doing a funny dance now, but it makes me think that he can, is there a wee bit of fragility there that he didn't have before, because he got thrown at the roof of a sports car at 100 and whatever mile an hour across a freeway.
Which says he can take a shot. He can take a good shot.
Yeah,
he can drive hurt.
Yeah, but the body doesn't forget that abuse. You know what I'm saying, mate? The organs or the bones and
which I think is touching on what Ames you were saying there as well. I think he looks
quantify
awkward on the back. He has a robotic look about him. I think maybe he's got iron rods implanted or something into him now.
But maybe fighters get back injuries and stuff. Maybe it's just old age. How much of that is age? Just as much as it could be part of the car crash. The more pressing issue for me of the two is the retina, knowing the sport, and that's the bigger worry, because eyes injuries and such have happened throughout the sport. That's the factor that I'd be looking at in the fight. And Crawford being an accurate puncher that he is, no doubt they'll be looking to target the eyes of Spence throughout the fight. It's very interesting actually. We put out a poll on Seconds Out, the community tab, and it's nearing 72,000 votes. It's split 50-50. But to add to that, also in my own personal experience, outside of a few in the chat, I haven't spoke to many other people than myself that are actually picking Spence. So yeah, I'm going with Spence in the fight. I love that like the mind games have started and Spence has kind of picked up the dub already. I know it's only like small, but at the top, like these wins, you pick them up throughout the fight week and they're important. Spence has got that already with the hot sauce thing, which is befuddled Crawford. As to how he knows he doesn't eat hot sauce, but he won't befuddle Crawford on the night. But what he will do is like crowd Crawford. Crawford for me is in his fighter profile. From what I kind of look at, his main attribute is he's excellent in terms of his control of distance. You fight on his terms, and I think Spence counters that with like educated pressure and activity, which mostly backfoots Crawford, allowing Spence to kind of break him down throughout the fight. A couple of small dents in Crawford's game in his career, Kavalauskas being the one where it was sort of like a knockdown and then a slip, and then Crawford was like, you know what, so what if he did knock me down? I got to him, didn't I? But kind of half admitting like it was a knockdown. So Crawford can be got to, and I think he will be got to. A lot will kind of as well, you know, depend on who is actually the naturally bigger guy. I remember when Khan fought Crawford, and this was the fight where people were saying like Khan's going to be that bigger guy in the fight, and then when it came to the actual fight night, the size was on Crawford's side completely. Crawford was the bigger of the two, dwarfing Khan. Now, size sure wasn't the only reason as to why, and the deciding reason as to why Crawford beat Khan on that night, but it might be a big reason in this one, and we won't fully know that until like the fight, or at least seeing them on the scales as well, where we can get a scope for it. But for me, I think activity and pressure for me is the key for Spence, and I think that's how he wins the fight, by backfooting Crawford on points, but kind of just crowding him throughout the fight.
Interesting from Ames there. Before we go to Joe Kennedy, the Dr. FMG says Spence to get off the floor to earn a draw, which is certainly one way of looking at it. Spence inside game is arguably the best in the game. Des says, no way. I think he was disagreeing with somebody else, by the way, not necessarily the doctor. No one in the world takes a liberty with Spence. It'll be a hard fight. Yes, but for me, Buddy's fitter, stronger, and just in that better place. Joe, you mentioned something in the private chat there about MB. Good point, saying that Bomac is only one of 3 trainers, just the biggest by far. There's quite a lot of voices in Crawford's corner. Crawford has been shot in the head in the past, as someone reminded me in the chat there.
He's a checkered past, it seems. All right. I think where he's from in Omaha, Nebraska, is not the.
You wouldn't mess with him, would you?
Nah, it's rough as a bear's arse around there. And I said,
you wouldn't fuck about with his cars anyway. Make sure his cars are in tip-top shape. They want him visiting your garage.
He'd be a great man for a tag team if you're ever in a tough spot with a few boys about to lump the head off you. He'd be the perfect man to kind of come in and help you out. He's just got that natural kind of street fighter thing about him, I think. But yeah, I can't wait for the fight. Like I said to you last week, Steve, I can't really believe that it's here as well.
I know.
You know, after all.
Well, it's not here yet, Joe.
Yeah, no, yeah, exactly. I know. I'm touching my head as I speak. Like, you know what I mean? But yeah, it's.
Rob's not here either.
Yeah, it's a good. It's. You know, I think Matt Butters made a good point in the chat that we just want to hope that Spence isn't driving to back and forth to the stadium all week. Like he said, hopefully he has his driver sorted. But no, once we get there on Saturday, it's going to be an amazing fight. And I think it's as close to the 50-50 as you can get, really. I'm not going to say forcefully one way or another. I think the longer that Spence can keep it at distance, I think the better for him. I think if they start exchanging, I'm not sure I fully agree with Dr. FMG's analysis on the inside game of Spence. I think it's definitely good, but I think that if they do get into exchanges early, I can see Crawford having the better of it. And I think if I was Spence, I'd be trying to keep it at distance with his jab for as long as possible.
Staying away for as long as possible. The boys are throwing their chat, their viewpoints into the chat. Rob's staying away as long as possible. On a Spence Crawford weekend, we would have seen him by now, hopefully. Oh,
well,
I don't know.
I've just texted him, man. This is outrageous. I cannot believe it, man. One of the guys who cried the most about this fight not happening, and it's almost like less than a week away, and he's not here.
Hold on. Since we got some knowledgeable guys on here, let me go to the potential dark side of the sport here and travel down this journey with me. gentlemen and
Booth.
ladies. My girlfriend listens to the podcast
safe.
too, actually. So Holly and my girlfriend. So we got 2 female listeners. Good for us. So if you look and they have the rematch clause, regardless who wins, right? Either fighter can enforce that. What is the best way to keep the shine on both of these fighters? A draw. If this fight goes the distance and is close, it behooves the boxing industry to make it a draw. And if it legitimately could be scored a 1, all the better off if it's actually close. But if it's leaning one way or the other, don't be surprised if you get that draw card. And it just seems to be the way it works. And if you look at it, the incentives are all there. I think Bud needs a knockout if he doesn't want to walk out of there with a draw.
Interesting. Do we know who the referee and the judges are by any chance? I was trying to Google it there, but you can never find out. Does anybody know in the chat know? I found out the Inoue Fulton ones, but
A second, I'll have a quick look.
I had a look on BoxRec. It's not listed. I know they do it during the week of the fight, so it probably maybe drop tomorrow. Or anybody in the chat know? Don Trella, Adelaide Bird being thrown in?
I have no idea.
No.
I just put in officials Crawford Spence and it says Crawford Spence is official.
Yeah, that's what I got too.
Come off it, man.
Isn't that helpful?
I wanted to know because
type in judges. Type in Crawford Spence judges and get more specific.
Well,
with
let's just be fair, or let's just be open here. We didn't want Tony Weeks. That's one thing we didn't want.
No, don't want him.
Kenny Bayless, we don't need him as well.
No.
Terry
Mark
O'Connor.
Nelson can jog on as well.
What about that guy who's the flavour of the month?
Willis. Him that does all the funny.
not
gunning
Willis.
faces
There's
and
another
all.
fella.
Harvey Dock is pretty good. If they,
Yeah,
and
he's good.
they've been struggling
all right,
getting. They've been struggling getting referees that are agreeable recently, so they've been getting some refs from other states. So
Yeah.
I don't know. It isn't entirely impossible that you'll see a non-normal judge for a Las Vegas.
Thomas
fight
Taylor
pop
was
up.
the guy I was thinking of. Matt Butters put it in the chat. Thomas Taylor.
Taylor's not bad.
Or
He's not bad.
Michael, the Canadian fellow who done the AJ Ruiz fight. Michael something. For me, where's my head at, man?
Can I just say something, by the way? I just
Pernick?
want to say something. I think the referee can't be white, man. It'll probably be a black referee. Got to be.
Think so?
Can't have a white referee fucking this up. Like.
What about a female
Well, they can't
referee?
claim that he's racist. They're both black guys.
Sparkle Lee, man. That's what we need. Well, that fellow who's got like the limp, the impediment.
No, man,
drags his
Kenny
foot.
win. So
Yeah,
Jack
Kenny.
Reese is getting the job, man.
Jack Reese. No, fuck no. Don't Jack Reese. Don't. No way.
Absolutely. Man. I tell you what, though, if Kenny Bayless gets the job, though, man, Spence is guaranteed winning it without doubt. Just didn't even bore watched it. Didn't even put money on that fight, man. But Bayless is going to assure
Richard
Spence gets the
Steele.
decision.
Need to get Richard Steele out of retirement or death. Is he alive still? I don't know. Richard Steele. I'm not sure.
Richard
Eddie
Steele.
Cotton. I think he is.
Oh, Richard Steele, aye, that's someone who stopped Mildred Taylor with 4 seconds
Oh,
to
that's
go.
right. Absolutely, yeah. David Palmer, not for ref, but he's thrown in a $5 in the super chats. He says Crawford points or late stoppage. Spence is relentless but robotic. Crawford will figure him out and pick him off towards the end. Well, yeah, that could well happen. That could happen. I think Danny Young's going to do a Nutters calling on the night of the fight. So during the Liam Davis, Jason Cunningham fight. So if you want to get over to patreon.com/boxing asylum, Matty, well, you don't have to do that, of course, because you can just jump on whenever you please. I think Danny's going to do a call-in, or if not, I might do one. So we can have a look during the fight week and pretend that we've watched the weigh-in and done some deep fight and some deep throat analysis like Linda Lovelace and say, oh, so-and-so looked tense at the press conference, like we're amateur psychologists, Matty.
Why not do live commentary for Cunningham against Davis?
Oh, well, we could do that. We'll all be at different times and different zones.
Yeah, that always works out well. I appreciated you spoiling that one fight for me. I'm trying to remember what one it was. I'm like, God fucking damn it. I didn't know he was going down.
Oh, dear. Right, okay, yeah, Danny's going to do that, and if not, I'll do it. So let's go around the panel who's on at the moment, and then we'll make our final picks, final predictions. Until Saturday evening, things might have changed. And then we might make another pick once we've seen the weigh-in, the press conferences, see who's looking tight at the weight, etc. First one to you, Andy. Final summation as of now, obviously, feel free to jump on a Saturday night if you wish, if you have any different thoughts and feelings. But as of now, Sunday evening, 10 o'clock, who are you going for and by what method of victory?
Spence.
What?
Sorry, Crawford. Sorry, it's Crawford. I was just reading something there. Just reading about the referee. Still trying to find out who the referee is, mate. Crawford decision. I agree with the part of the last take that was just read out there, and that I could see Crawford picking it up down the stretch. But I think both guys, as you say, Steve, pride, ego, I think they're too good still at this point not to have a bit of a humdinger here down the stretch. We want to see some action as well. Skills pay the bills, we all know it, but I think at some point we need something here to kind of say this guy was the better man on the night, and I think that'll be Crawford. I think if it comes right down to it, the guts it, I think Crawford will be the stronger man of the two in the end.
Points or stoppage?
Points, Crawford.
Of course, Matty, as you make your pick as well, I've sort of poo-pooed the stoppage a little bit. Don't see anybody getting stopped. I don't. But, of course, they're both very prideful men, both very stubborn. They're going to go at it. They've got the dog. They're going to go into the trenches, which, of course, could leave someone to overstepping their boundaries, overstepping the mark, and indeed getting knocked out early.
That could happen. That uppercut is there for Spence. I don't discount that as a possibility. Just to make a little run here, just some things from the betting markets I think are interesting.
Oh, yes,
top
go
of
ahead.
DraftKings.
Yes, of course.
So Terence Crawford right now, and I'm sorry, I don't know all of. I don't want to do fractions in my head and do conversions right now. So bear with me with the American lingo. Terence Crawford is a minus 155 favorite right now, meaning you'd have to bet 155 to win 100. Spence paying plus 120, have to bet 100 to win 120. It's look, they're agreeing with you, and its odds are it's probably going the distance. It's just a little bit less than 1 to 2 if you're looking for the fight to go the distance. But all of that said, you get down into the odds. As far as the most likely method of victory here is Crawford plus 175 for decision. Spence plus 210. So seeing both of those likely. But when you get into the stoppage, Steve, that's where there's obviously a noticeable difference. Crawford paying just a little bit less than 3-1 to win by stoppage, with Spence paying about would that be 11-2 to get the stoppage. So there's a big difference there. So they're saying if someone's getting a stoppage, it's probably going to be Crawford. And then when you get into them looking at the rounds, Crawford to win in round 7 through 12 is 9-2. And the best looking 6 rounds you're getting on Spence, you're getting good odds on it, is what would that be? That'd be 19-2. To win in the back half of the fight. Not good odds on either of them to win in the front half of the fight.
The draw over here, just checked here in Willie Hills, the draw over here is 14-1.
Yep, same thing, which is a little bit close on the men's side of things compared to usually. Most of the time you see it a little bit wider than that. So Crawford is definitely the favorite. Very close to whether he could win on decision or knockout, though, comparatively when you look at it comparatively. So I got to say I'm leaning Bud by stoppage, but I've been a Bud fan for a long time. But when you're looking at a streak, it's pretty incredible. Recency bias, not really there because he's just been storming through everybody. First man to stop many of the opponents on his ledger. The first man to stop Sean Porter. You saw Errol Spence was able to put him down, not able to finish the job, not even close. That fight actually going to a split decision. Some people might look at that a little bit weird. I don't think that Porter did enough, obviously. But nonetheless, somebody there did. This is definitely a more diminished version of Errol Spence in comparison to what you'd be looking at with Crawford, who at 35 years old is definitely not at his best. But having seen him live and seen him on in just through his career and watched intently, Crawford is not that far off of the best that he's ever been. He does know how to keep that jab active if need be. I do worry about the uppercut because Kavalauskas did catch him with a good one. But the feeling on here is if it goes to the cards, it could very well be the draw. But I think that Crawford, he's not one to play the role of company man, and he's going to be there to try to get the knockout late.
And is that what you're going for then, yeah?
Oh, yeah.
Are you going to put money down on it? You have a little cheeky parlay?
I have one going from a while ago, so we'll see how that goes. I need Fulton and Crawford to win.
Okay, there we go. There we go. Right, Ames, I think you're the only person who's sort of siding with me. Thank you very much for that. I don't feel too out of place here on the panel then. Final prediction, please.
Yeah, I'd have no clue what Matty just said in that 5 minutes. All that betting jargon goes straight all over my head. But speaking of jargon, I thought I'd just quickly search up all the boxing cliches heading into this fight, and this is a modern day Hagler Hearn. So don't blink, because either fighter can end the fight. It's a must-win fight of the year written all over it. It's about
Eddie being at
legacy.
his best, I take it.
They're daring to be great between the two of them. That's all I've got. So. Yeah,
is IFL the one pushing those quotes, mate?
No, I literally just threw it out on Google just to see what everyone was saying. But yeah, no, it's Spence for me to win the fight. I think in how it plays out, first few rounds, I think Crawford's natural caginess will be his detriment, with Spence kind of being the one to really push the fight, and he kind of, with his activity, kind of racks up the points. Then Crawford kind of gets into a bit more of a gear through the mid rounds. He might hurt Spence throughout the fight, but I just think Spence dogs this out and doesn't dog walk Crawford in any sort of way. But I think with activity, he wins this fight on a split. I think it's a split decision win for Crawford, but I think for Spence. Sorry, but I think he gets the nod.
The nod for Spence frames there. MB joking, saying these two really don't like each other. Obviously, that's what the beef would say on the YouTube, but I completely disagree, Joe. As you make your summation, I think these two actually do like each other and they seem to get on well. It's a bit of forced beef.
Yeah, there's definitely respect between the two of them. And the hot sauce thing was definitely a pretty funny moment. It was good to see Crawford getting in Derek James's face as well from the get-go. I think there's definitely respect between the two camps. And I think I think it'll be cagey enough early on, like Andy mentioned. I think a couple of people have said that Crawford will probably start slow, and if he does do that, I think that would definitely be to his detriment, because Spence with the jab and the fundamentals could just rack up the points early. And I think that if Crawford has to start jumping in and reaching in, that he'll get picked off by Spence as well. I think that he'll need to keep it competitive throughout and then hope to get him down the stretch. But I think Maddie could be on the money with a draw. I think I'm going to stick my neck out and put it on the draw as well.
Oh, he's going for the draw.
Yeah,
for a few quid, just to kind of parlay or whatever they say, Joe, or are you actually thinking it might genuinely be a draw?
I think it might genuinely be a draw. I think it's as close to 50-50 as you can get. Two excellent fighters. I think people have been overlooking Spence. I think going into it, there's a lot more talk about, like you said, Crawford running through him like a bad dose. I just don't see that happening. I think that, I think it's going to be razor close either way. And Crawford probably needs to win convincingly to win it on points as well against the A side. So, I think a draw is definitely within the realms. I'll probably put a cheeky couple of quid on a parlay with that. Yeah.
Lovely stuff. And finally, our guest, Matt Butters of the Boxing Nutters Prediction League. What are you going for, sir?
Yeah, I've been listening to everyone, and you still have to go with Crawford by decision. I think same thoughts as before. I think he's just got another gear to go through, and I think he'll show that on the night. And just going quickly back to Matty's point about this might be a draw in order to get the next fight. I think even if this is a split decision victory for Crawford, say, or even for Spence, this is going to go straight to a second fight. If that's also a split decision, I think we could have a trilogy on our hands here. And if all three turn out to be fantastic fights, this could be the trilogy of our generation, lads. So I'm looking forward to that.
The rate these lot fight, though, did you say our generation? I think it's going to probably spill into the next generation as well.
We'd probably all be in old people's homes by then, Steve. Yeah.
Be on a Misfits card in 15 years.
I don't know about you, Matt, but I definitely will be. Lovely stuff. Yes, thank you very much to the boys for joining us. Feel free to stick around for Belly of the Week, Joe, Matt, Ames, whoever else doesn't usually come on if you want. I'm going to make my prediction then just to close things out. As you'll probably know, I know I'm in the minority here, quite literally. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to 2. I'm going for Spence on points or late stoppage. I think the fight's going to be immensely competitive. I rate both fighters very highly, but I just think Spence's jab, closure, distance, and his body attack's going to be the difference. And I think he'll be able to wear Crawford down and maybe even stop him, actually. I think he's a big 147-pounder. I think he's going to provide a reality check to the guys Crawford's fought before. And I'll go for more specific then, so you can all rid me and take the piss next week. I'm going to go for Spence, 10th round stoppage.